Hello and welcome to the Sports Credential Podcast. I'm your host, the editor of the Sports Credential, Stephen Boero. Thank you so much for joining us here for our first episode of the Sports Credential Podcast. Here at the Sports Credential and Music Row Magazine, we're really excited to get this thing going, to be able to talk to you guys about the world of Nashville sports, the ins and outs, the industry, what's going on the field, what's going on off the field, and everything in between. So thank you for tuning in. And if you don't know who the Sports Credential is, we are a new publication here in Nashville focusing on everything that is Nashville sports industry related. So everything that's going on in the front office, to major deals, to advertising deals, to front office shakeups, to mid-management stuff. But we also cover what's going on the field as well. So from everything to Titans playoffs, Titans draft, Preds playoff, all the big moves that happen in and out of the Nashville sports season. So we are a subsidiary of Music Row Magazine, which has been Nashville's top music industry publication for the last 30 plus years. We launched here in 2021. And we've been going strong, and we've been building, and we've been growing, and we're so excited to bring another form of content to the Nashville sports fan. So to talk to you guys a little bit about what we're going to do here at the Sports Credential Podcast is we're going to break down a couple of the biggest stories that are happening this week, and then we're going to dive into the main chunk of the show, which will be a major topic like maybe the Titan Stadium deal, or maybe the new GM change with the Predators, with David Poile leaving after 25 fantastic years and Mr. Barry Trotz coming back to take over that. Issues like that, or maybe, the greater scheme of the NIL world within Nashville, or the growing Nashville sports community with, Nashville trying to bring in more diversity with women's sports, trying to get an NWSL team or WNBA team. There's so much going on. There's so much in the ins and outs that we just cannot wait to get our hands into. So let's kick things off with our first couple topics. So the first thing we got to cover has happened this past week is the Metro Sports Authority had a early meeting this month, talk about some of the ins and outs of the new lease agreement between the city of Nashville and the Titans regarding the brand new Titan Stadium deal. So there was a lot going on there, a lot of talking about who's responsible for what, who's not responsible for what, who has to pay for what, who doesn't have to pay for what. So there's a lot going on with that, and there's going to be 3 more meetings this month of March before it should be finalized. But it looks like a deal should be finalized by April. And I know before Titans said hopefully the stadium would be done by 2026, but it looks like now August of 2027 is looking like when the stadium will be finished to some completion, where the team can start playing and fans can start attending games at the new Titan Stadium. So we're going to keep an eye on for that. So make sure you follow the Sports Credential on our social medias, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and keep up to date on our website, because we will be covering everything and anything regarding the new Titan Stadium deal. Next thing I'd like to talk about and hit on is Nashville SC. 3 games in, looking fantastic so far. 7 points, 2 wins, 1 draw, and have yet to concede a goal, with a fantastic Joe Willis in the net to anchor things down for Nashville SC. We've seen some great work by the young Jacob Schaffelberg, the new sweetheart of Nashville, along with Hani Mukhtar. He was injured those first 2 games and came on pretty late in the first game and came in at halftime against New York Red Bulls in the second game, but played a full 90 minutes in the third game, and he looked fantastic. Still a few things that Nashville SC's got to fix up. Possession's not great. They only control 35 possession of each of the last 3 games. So a lot's got to kind of fix up, and I think when Anibal Godoy and Randa Leal come back, things will start to fall in place for Nashville. But another team that we're going to continuously cover, and we're going to have some guests, hopefully, in the near future to talk about Nashville and how Nashville SC and how it's growing and how soccer is becoming such a powerhouse and beloved sport here in Nashville. And the last thing I want to hit on before we head into our main topic to discuss is a Titans free agency. I don't want to go too deep into it because we're still in the really early stage of the free agency. But I would want to hit on it while I'm here. So Titans made a move for Andre Dillard from the Eagles, offensive lineman who's probably going to be playing left or right tackle. A huge get for the Titans for 3 years, $29 million. That's a pretty big deal for the Titans, and it's a very, very much needed position. And we'll see where they take it from there if he's going to play on the right side or left side. But there's still a lot of holes the Titans have to fill up, including, most importantly, offensive line. They let Nate Davis go this week. Then David Long yesterday. We let him go. And we'll see another outside linebacker. That's another hole the Titans are going to have to fill. We're going to see what type of moves that Rand Carthon and the rest of the Titans team, Mike Vrabel, try to build because they have a lot of holes. I think everyone's been saying that for the last couple of weeks, probably for the last couple of months, really, about how they really need to just redo their offensive line. They need a center. They need a left guard. They need a left tackle. They need a right tackle. They need wide receiver 2 because I think it's safe to say Treylon Burks is going to be wide receiver 1. So, there's a lot to think about and build off of. And, how hard are the Titans going to go this year? Is Rand Carthon going to go all in on the last couple of years of Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill? Or are they going to try to build up some pieces, pick up some draft, and try to almost kind of do a soft rebuild? Because that's what it's feeling right now if they continue on this pace. Not making a whole lot of, free agency signings, but it's all speculation. We don't know what's going to happen. So hopefully next week and really soon we can dive deeper into Titans free agency and where they're going into next season, which is going to be very exciting. But it's March, and you know what that means? That means college basketball. So that's going to be our first topic for our first ever Sports Credential episode. We're going to be talking about March Madness as well as local Nashville hoops. First off, huge congratulations to the MTSU Lady Blue Raiders for winning the Conference USA regular season title and their tournament title, heading into the March Madness tournament as an 11 seed. They were ranked multiple times throughout the year. They didn't finish the year ranked in the most recent AP poll, but 25 for most of the year. Fantastic season from those ladies. Fantastic coaching performance from Rick Insell, who's been there for years. So it's going to be really exciting to see those ladies. I wouldn't be shocked if they can pick up a win or two and pick up a few upsets in the tournament. Belmont ladies, also fantastic season in their first year in the Missouri Valley Conference. Did a fantastic job picking up the regular season title along with the Illinois State Redbirds, but lost to Drake in the conference tournament finals, but they will be finding their way in the WNIT. I believe they're taking on Ball State, and I would not be surprised if they're going to make a deep run in the WNIT. They got a lot of young talent there over at Belmont. But obviously, the big dog in town, Vanderbilt, having one of their best seasons in 7 years. Vanderbilt finished their season 20-14 with 11 conference wins, including wins over ranked Tennessee and 2 wins over ranked Kentucky, both in Kentucky towards the end of the season and just last week in the quarterfinals of the SEC tournament here in Nashville. They also had a big win over Auburn, who's a tournament team, and they have a win over Mississippi State, who's also a tournament team. So that's one of the biggest things I want to talk about today is, did Vanderbilt really get snubbed? They not fit quite into the tournament field. There's a lot of things you got to take into account. You got to take in strength of schedule. You have to see wins against Q1 and Q2 opponents, which is what the net rankings is based on. And over the last couple of years, the net rankings is everything when it comes to the NCAA tournament. And did Vanderbilt deserve to be one of the top teams among the SEC that got in? 8 teams from the SEC got selected to play in the NCAA tournament. Vanderbilt not being one of them, even though they finished in 6th place in the final standings and was a semifinalist in this year's conference tournament at Bridgestone Arena. So there's a lot to dive into. First off, let's take a look at their net ranking. Vanderbilt finished the season with an 81 net ranking. I don't believe the NCAA tournament committee has ever picked a team lower than 73 to be in the NCAA tournament. And if you look at the rest of the field, the rest of the guys, it looks like Pittsburgh, Arizona State at 67 and 66 respectively are one of the very few teams that are towards the end of the net ranking list that have made it as at-large bid teams. So Vanderbilt's still all the way up there at 8, and teams like Seton Hall didn't get through. Teams like Bradley, great season, didn't get through. So there's a lot to account and a lot to think about when it comes to what qualifies a team. And I mean, you look at Vanderbilt, 5 quad 1 wins and 11 quad 1 losses. So you got to take that into account. Not great, but picking up 5 wins, especially against ranked teams or close to ranked teams, and all those teams wound up becoming tournament teams. Quad 2 teams, 5-0. Quad 3, 5-2. Quad 4, 5-1. So you look at those last two, Q3 and Q4, they got 3 losses, opposed to Mississippi State, who's ranked 49th, and then they're a first 4 team this year. They finished the season 8-0 in Q4. That's pretty great if you think about how they were able to just pick up those wins. I think Vanderbilt not finishing their regular season with 20 overall wins, I think that hurt them. And I do think that the committee does have a little bit of prejudice against teams with their top players being injured. I think with Liam Robbins being out for the season, I would not be surprised if the NCAA tournament committee looked at that and they decided not to give Vanderbilt a shot. But I think a lot of people knew that Vanderbilt was a fringe team. The biggest issue I think people have with it is they weren't even considered as a first 4 out team or next 4 out team. They weren't even in that conversation. They had Clemson over them. They had North Carolina over them. They had Rutgers over them. Rutgers was arguably a team that could have really been in. Maybe should have been in over Nevada, who was one of the last teams to get in. But when you look at it, Vanderbilt kind of got a lot of disrespect for how fantastic they played this year. Liam Robbins winning SEC Defensive Player of the Year. Obviously, he was hurt, but that counts for something for how good this team played. And then Jerry Stackhouse is probably by far his best season here at Vanderbilt. So you got to feel that was almost like they weren't even in the conversation for them being a tournament team. And then you get to the NIT, they should be a 1 or 2 seed for how good they are and how close they really should have been to getting into the tournament and how close they were to getting to the SEC tournament final. They had to overtake Texas A&M, and obviously they're a fantastic team, tournament team, and they wound up losing to Alabama. But they were super close to getting to that final game, to being one win will get away from being an automatic qualifier in the NCAA tournament. And in the NIT, they get picked as a 3 seed. So I don't know what was going on with both of these committees, their disrespect to Vanderbilt. Maybe they didn't follow the season that we saw as members of the Nashville community, the Nashville media. We're focusing on Vanderbilt almost every single game and every single week. And they just did not get the respect they deserve for how well they played with a lot of those seniors, with Jordan Wright being Jerry Stackhouse's first recruit and hitting a game winner against Kentucky, ranked Kentucky in Kentucky. That's a big deal. And I just feel like there were a lot of things that got overlooked at Vanderbilt. And I'm not sure if they don't have the respect they deserve quite yet. Had a great season last year with Scottie Pippen Jr. Well, I think a lot of people coming into this season thought they weren't going to be that great. I think they were picked to finish 8th, maybe 9th in the SEC this season. And what they do, they finished 6th. They finished 6th with 11 conference wins. So I think Vanderbilt has a lot to be proud of, and they have a lot to build off of. That's what I think Vanderbilt and Coach Stackhouse and his coaching staff should be thinking about right now. We have a foundation now. We have a foundation that we can win games. We can have recruits come in and become big players. Maybe recruits that weren't, major names, that weren't the top recruits in the nation. They can come in and they can be superstars here in the SEC, which is still one of the best basketball conferences, regardless of what people on the outside in the national media might say. SEC basketball is still some of the best in the country and has been for the last couple of years. So this is a foundation for Vanderbilt where they can start to take off, and Jerry Stackhouse can start to build the Vanderbilt identity that he wants. So it's a shame they didn't get in, but there's still a lot to look forward to in this NCAA tournament. I mean, Tennessee should be a very good team. I actually have them going out early to Oral Roberts. I have Oral Roberts being my Cinderella story team this year, taking out Duke and taking out Tennessee. But we'll see. Tennessee's got a fantastic team behind them with Rick Barnes. They still have a lot of holes. They're big defensively, but defensively in the SEC tournament, they didn't show up. Mizzou really, they called their number and they showed up. I think Mizzou is another SEC team that people should not be sleeping on. They're a fantastic team. But a lot of things you want to look when I look at the NCAA tournament. I make a ton of brackets like everybody else, probably 10 brackets minimum. But one of the biggest things I like to look at is the outside. What's going on with the numbers? What's going on with the TV ratings? What's going on with the money? Because as we all know, college basketball, as much as they want to talk about being amateur and, student athletes, which are still important, they're still student athletes, but then we were talking about not just millions, but billions of dollars. And there's some great articles out taking a look at, the NCAA and what March Madness is going to look like. Because obviously in 2020, once COVID hit, the NCAA tournament got canceled. And then the next year, there were not many fans allowed at the tournament. So we saw as revenue took a hit. But over these last few years now, post-COVID, more states are opening sports books. Gambling is becoming more and more common among not just, people who always gamble to younger people who like to throw a couple bucks here and there. People who've never really done a whole lot, but they like to throw a couple bucks here, a couple of bucks there, but drop money on the money line. This is a huge thing to take a look at. And it's actually kind of crazy that the American Gaming Association has predicted that a quarter of all Americans, which is 68 million, plan to wager $15.5 billion this year on the NCAA tournament, on March Madness. That is a crazy number to think about. $15.5 billion. Not on tickets, not on beer sale, not on merchandise, but on gambling. I think it just shows you how crazy, sports betting has become over these last couple years. And it's a lot to take in. Do we think it's a good thing? Do we think it's a bad thing? I mean, 31 million plan to place a traditional sports wager, while 21.5 million plan to bet casually with friends. And we see that a lot. You have a bracket pool at work. Everyone throws in a couple bucks. You have one with your buddies and you do a big, $100 a bracket, or you could get 5 brackets for $100. So there's a lot of money flowing around, and there always has been. But with more and more states allowing sports books to open up, it's becoming more accessible for Americans. And I know I've been one to always question about, should there be sports gambling in college athletics? Because we're already dealing with the issues of should athletes be paid? The NIL issue. No, I'm a full supporter of the NIL, but how regulated should it be? Who's allowed to help sponsor an athlete? Is a booster allowed? Is an alumni allowed? So there's a lot of issues with that. And I think one of those issues is gambling. I think you see a lot of sponsors for a lot of media companies. Barstool Sportsbook is everywhere. I mean, you see BetMGM, FanDuel. These guys are everywhere, and everyone's getting a cut, whether it's sponsorship, do a whole lot of gambling, content, picks of the week. You see that everywhere. Everyone's doing it. Everyone is doing it. And it's become a billion-dollar industry. It's not just, the lifelong gamblers. It's, moms and college kids are putting money in on March Madness or the Super Bowl. But when it comes to college athletics, I definitely think there could be an issue there, because there's billions of dollars here in college athletics. Now, there's always been, but now it's getting bigger and it's getting bigger and it's getting bigger. And there's more. There's billions and billions of dollars. The conversations head is continuing to head that in that direction, but I think it needs to be picked up because I think this year's numbers financially from the NCAA tournament is going to be the biggest ever by far, with more sports books out there in states than ever. How easy it is to place a bet, and just for how big this tournament's going to be, and even the women's tournament, they're continuing to grow. They're continuing to get bigger sponsors. They're continuing to get more television views, and with that comes advertisement, and it comes sports betting. So I think it begs to continue, and we need to ask this question: is who gets that money? Should student athletes start getting paid? Should student athletes get a cut from the revenue from the NCAA tournament? Because we know the teams will get money. They'll get bonuses from the NCAA for making the tournament. But do the players deserve a cut of that? And that goes into the whole Title IX issue. Should the men's players get more than the women's players, even though the men's make more money? Or if a women's team makes more money than a smaller men's team, do they get more money than the men's team? There's a whole issue here that needs to be worked out, because we're heading into a wild west in the world of college athletics here in the U.S. And it seems like the NCAA is trying to play catch up with what the courts are allowing now with NIL. NCAA has been trying to push down NIL for years, but now over the last few years, 2 years, student athletes are able to do this. NCAA needs to play catch up, because things are going to get really messy really quick. And with the amount of money a tournament like the NCAA tournament brings in, I mean, it's March. When people say it's March, a lot of people will be like, it's basketball season. This is March Madness. I mean, my favorite number to look at is that last year, or I believe the 2022 March Madness tournament, NCAA made $1.16 billion. On 2021, NCAA recorded $1.16 billion in revenue, and more than 85% of that came from March Madness. I mean, that is insane. And let's be honest, a lot of these kids, they're not going to the NBA. And many of them that don't go to the NBA, they'll play overseas, but not for this type of money we're talking about. I mean, we're pushing $2 billion. It's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, NCAA signed a long-term deal for 22 years with CBS and Turner Sports. That's up to almost $20 billion over that 22-year span. And the NCAA is going to receive $870 million of that. It's absolutely bonkers. And that's 870 just, this upcoming year for March Madness. And it just continues to raise that question. Yes, NIL is great, but it needs to be regulated. And how much further is this going to go? Because I'm all for NIL. I am all for NIL. But now, I mean, there's lots of people I know I talk to that believe that college athletes should be treated like employees. They should be getting money. And when you look at that number, 1.6 billion with a B in 2021, and 85% of that came from March Madness. I mean, those young men and young ladies, I mean, they're bringing in millions and millions and millions of dollars into the NCAA. And for the longest time, they weren't getting NIL deals. I mean, for decades, they weren't getting anything. Now they are getting something through NIL, which is fantastic. So hopefully the NCAA can find a way to keep, college sports amateur in that sense of they're not getting a paycheck from the school. But, when there's a lot of money, everyone's going to want a cut of it. And with NIL, people are getting cuts. And with sports gambling, people are getting cuts, except for a lot of these student athletes. So we'll see. It's going to be a great tournament. I personally have UCLA taking home the trophy this year, but we'll see. I don't know. Usually when I pick the winner, they're usually out by the third round because I overthink it and I make 5 brackets and I do them all over again. But it's going to be exciting, and it's going to be exciting and interesting to see the numbers this year for TV and for sports betting. I think they're going to be astronomical, and they're going to bring up lots of conversations, which I'm really excited to hear. And I think they're conversations that need to be discussed now before things can get really messy. Now, before we leave, and thank you again for listening to the Sports Credential Podcast. But before we leave, you guys, we're going to go over some of the best things to look out each week. That's what we want to do. Before we conclude each episode, we're going to look forward to the week because there's always something going on in Nashville. Let's take a look, shall we? Start off Nashville SC, boys in gold, back in action on Saturday, March 18th, at New England Revolution. That will be 6:30 Central Time. New England have a pretty okay team this year. We'll see. It's still a whole lot to go into when it comes to this early on in the MLS season. Lots of things can change. Lots of teams can, an injury can set them back. A player coming back from injury can push them forward. A transfer, I mean, it's so up in the air. But so far, Nashville looks good, which is exciting to see. Back in action on Saturday. Hopefully, Anibal Godoy and Randall Leal are healthy by then. With those two guys back, I think Nashville should be looking at a really good first start to the season. Now, what we've been talking about all day so far, college basketball. There's going to be tons of college basketball. Vanderbilt men's basketball start off in the NIT on Tuesday, so this will be dropping after the game. But yeah, Tuesday at 8:30 at Memorial Madness, against Yale. Yale's got a great team. They've always been a real fighter. Another team that just missed the kind of that window of maybe being a contender, maybe not for the NCAA tournament. Yale's always a fantastic team in the Ivy League, so that'll be a fun one. I'd say keep your eye on Vanderbilt for making a nice deep run in the NIT. So that'll be exciting. And then who they take next later on in the week. On Thursday, Belmont women will be taking on Ball State, Muncie, Indiana. So once again, another Nashville team that y'all need to be looking out for. Belmont's ladies, they always kick butt, and I would not be surprised if they make another deep run. And then the NCAA tournament itself kicks off on Thursday, the 16th. Let's take a look at a handful of those games. West Virginia, Maryland, kicking off the day at 11:15 Central Time. I think I have to go with Maryland. Let's look at Virginia Furman next. Virginia. Missouri, Utah State. I think you have to go with Mizzou. I don't sleep on Mizzou, folks. Don't sleep on Mizzou. But Utah State's a great team. That's definitely a team that can make a little bit of a run. But I'm going to go with Mizzou. Howard and Kansas. Howard, a great HBCU program, taking on the reigning champs, Kansas. Got to give it to Kansas. Alabama is taking on one of the first four teams. Can't remember which two, but doesn't matter. Alabama's winning. Charleston, San Diego State. Princeton, Arizona. Arizona's probably going to be a Final Four team or at least an Elite Eight. I'm got to go Arizona. And Illinois, Arkansas, later in the afternoon. Both really good teams. It's a 9v8. But I think I'm going to have to go with Illinois over Arkansas. Sorry to all you Razorback fans, but got to go with Illinois. And then another 8 and 9 seed, Auburn, Iowa. That is going to be one heck of a game at 10-6 on Thursday night. I'm going to have to go with Auburn. Yeah, I still believe in Bruce Pearl. He's a great coach. They have a great program there. I'm going to have to go with Auburn. And then Oral Roberts Duke. Like I said, I have Oral Roberts with the upset. One of my brackets, I have him in the upset. One of them, I don't. I think Oral Roberts is a fantastic team. Arguably one of the best mid-majors in the entire country and have been all season. So that's going to be my underdog story. I'm going to have to go with Oral Roberts. Colgate, Texas. Boise State, Northwestern. Northern Kentucky, Houston. Got to go with Houston. Louisiana, Tennessee. Got to go with the Vols. Penn State versus A&M. I'm going A&M. They had a fantastic season, a fantastic SEC tournament as well before falling to Alabama. But yeah, I have to go with A&M. And then UNC Asheville versus UCLA. I have them winning it all. And finally, let's look at Friday's games. Another fantastic set. We have some great first round games. Let's go through these really quickly. These are free picks, folks, and I'm not charging you for these. So Here we go. USC, Michigan State. USC is fantastic, but I'm going with Michigan State. I think Tom Izzo's squad is going to make a deep run. I think they could definitely be an Elite Eight team, but that's just my opinion. UCSB versus Baylor. Baylor, I think they're going to make another deep run. VCU versus St. Mary's. St. Mary's, another team I think is also going to try to push for an Elite Eight spot. Vermont Marquette, got to go Marquette. Iowa State versus the first four team. I actually have Pitt winning, beating Iowa State in that first round. So first four team through. So that's one of my wilder picks is Pitt beating Iowa State in the first round. NC State versus Creighton. Fantastic year this year in the Big East. I think they're definitely going to be able to get to the second round. Iona versus UConn. Both teams really, really close to each other in location. Iona had a great year, but I think UConn's got this. Purdue taking on first four team. Can't remember which teams those are, but doesn't matter. It's going to be Purdue. Providence versus Kentucky. I have Providence beating Kentucky. I think Providence is, a well-coached team, an experienced team, and they're just a great team overall. I think Kentucky is good, and I think they'll hang, but they're going to have an impeccable final 10 minutes to be able to beat Providence. Drake, Miami. Miami's got an amazing team, but Drake is super hot right now. They finished the season in the Missouri Valley super strong, and they walked away with that title. So I'm going to actually have to go with Drake at a 12 seed, taking out Miami as a 5 seed. Grand Canyon versus Gonzaga. Florida Atlantic University versus Memphis, 9v8. Another fantastic matchup. I'm going to have to go for Memphis. Montana State versus Kansas State. Kent State versus Indiana. I'm going to go with Indiana, another team that a lot of people are picking to make a deep run, and I think it's possible, but exciting to see that. TCU taking on their first four team. I got TCU winning that. So those are my picks for the NCAA tournament first round. Take them or leave them, bet on them or not. I'm not telling you to do so. I'm not telling you not to do so. Those are your free picks. But that's it for this first ever episode of the Sports Credential Podcast. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Please be sure to follow the Sports Credential on Twitter, on Facebook, and on Instagram. Be sure to give me a follow as well at SJ Boero, Boero, Sports. So at SJ Boero Sports on Twitter. I'll keep everyone up to date, always talking about what's going on in the Nashville sports world. A lot going on with the Preds, a lot going on with the Titans, college basketball. There's always stuff going on, and I'm always talking. So be sure to give me a follow. Be sure to give the Sports Credential a follow. And be sure to tune in to our next episode of the Sports Credential Podcast next Wednesday as we continue to dive into more topics here going on in the Nashville sports world. Once again, I'm Stephen Boero. Thank you guys for joining, and I will talk to you guys next week.